Jake Morrison felt the ship shake again under his feet. The vibrations ran through the metal floor of the bridge and up into his bones. He gripped the captain's chair tighter and watched the warning lights flash red across every control panel. The stellar dawn was dying around them, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. "Status report," Jake called out to his crew. His voice stayed calm even though his heart was racing. A good captain never let fear show on his face. His crew needed to see strength right now. Lisa Walsh looked up from her communication station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, but her face showed frustration. The fusion core is still bleeding radiation into space. The containment field failed completely about an hour ago. We're losing power to all systems. Pete Collins wiped sweat from his forehead as he worked at the engineering console. His hands shook slightly as he typed commands into the computer. "I've tried everything I can think of. The core breach happened too fast and too deep. We can't repair it without a full shipyard and replacement parts we don't have." Jake nodded slowly. He had expected this answer, but hoped Pete might find a miracle solution. Pete was the best engineer Jake had ever worked with. If Pete said it couldn't be fixed, then it truly couldn't be fixed. "How long do we have?" Jake asked the question that everyone was thinking, but nobody wanted to hear. Answered. Pete looked down at his readings, and his face went pale. With the power drain from the core breach and life support running on backup systems, maybe 72 hours. Could be less if we lose more systems. The bridge went quiet, except for the steady beeping of warning alarms. 43 people were on this ship. 43 souls floating in the empty darkness between stars. Jake had brought them all out, here to survey this system. He had made the decision to push deeper into unexplored space than any human ship had gone before. Now they were all going to die because of his choices. Brandon Lee spoke up from the science station. His young voice cracked a little with stress. "Captain, we're 3 months' travel from the nearest human outpost. Even if someone got our distress signal right now, they couldn't reach us in time." Amy Rodriguez moved between the injured crew members lying on emergency beds they had set up on the bridge. 3 people had been hurt when the fusion core exploded. She worked quietly with medical supplies, checking their conditions and giving them medicine for pain. "The injured are stable for now," she said without looking up from her work, "but they need real medical facilities soon." Jake walked over to the main view screen that showed the stars outside. They were beautiful points of light scattered across the black of space. Each star might have planets around it. Some of those planets might have life, but none of them could help the stellar dawn know. This part of space was marked as empty on all the star charts. No colonies, no stations, no other ships, just endless emptiness. "Lisa, can you boost our emergency beacon?" Jake asked. He knew it was probably useless, but they had to try everything. Lisa's hands moved over her controls again. She frowned as she worked. "I can give it one good boost before the power systems fail completely. It won't reach human space, but maybe. Someone else might hear it." "Someone else?" Brandon asked. "You mean aliens?" Lisa shrugged. "We've never made contact with alien life, but that doesn't mean it's not out there. If there's any chance at all, we have to take it." Jake thought about this. In all of human history, they had never found proof of intelligent alien life. Earth scientists argued about whether other thinking beings existed in the galaxy. Most people believed humans were alone among the stars. But what if they were wrong? What if someone was listening? "Do it," Jake said. "Send the strongest signal you can." Lisa nodded and began working. The lights on the bridge dimmed as she pulled power from other systems to boost their emergency transmitter. Warning sounds grew louder as more systems went offline. "Signal boosted and transmitting," she announced. "I'm sending our location ship status, and crew count on repeat. The message would travel at light speed in all directions. It would take years to reach the nearest human colonies. But maybe, just maybe, someone closer would hear it. Someone who could help them. Claire Thompson looked up from her navigation station. Captain, I've calculated our exact position and added it to the distress signal. If anyone comes looking for us, they'll know where to find us. Jake nodded his thanks. Claire was always precise with her work. If rescue came, they would need exact coordinates to find one small ship in the vastness of space. Danny Kim spoke. From the pilot station. All engines are offline now. We're drifting with no power to navigation systems. I can't even adjust our course. The ship felt different, now without the constant hum of the engines. The silence was strange and frightening. Jake had spent 20 years in space, and ships always made noise. The quiet meant death was coming. Amy stood up from checking on the injured crew members. I need to talk to everyone about rationing, she said quietly. Water, food, and medicine. If we're careful, we can stretch our supplies. Jake gathered his senior officers around him. These people had followed him across the galaxy. They trusted his leadership and his decisions. Now he had to help them face the reality of their situation. I want everyone to know the truth, Jake sighed. Our chances of rescue are very small, but we're not giving up. We'll follow emergency procedures and take care of each other. We've been through dangerous situations before, and we've always found a way. Pete managed a weak smile. Remember that plasma storm near Jupiter? You got us through that when everyone said it was impossible. And the reactor overload on Europa Station, Grandin added. You figured out how to fix that too. Jake felt a small bit of warmth despite their terrible situation. His crew still believed in him. That meant something. That meant everything. We'll set up rotating shifts to monitor all systems, Jake continued. We'll share resources equally. We'll stay together and keep working until the last moment. Maybe our distress call will reach someone who can help. Lisa looked up from her communication station with surprise on her face. Captain, something's happening to our signal. It's being amplified somehow. Someone or something is boosting our transmission. Jake rushed over to look at her readings. The signal strength was growing stronger than their equipment should allow. Something was out there in the darkness, listening and responding. Can you tell where the boost is coming from? Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. The source is too far away to locate, but our signal is definitely being enhanced by external technology. For the first time since the fusion core failed, Jake felt a spark of hope. They were not alone in this empty sector of space. Something had heard their cry for help. Now they could only wait and see what would answer their call. 18 hours had passed since their distress signal started getting boosted by unknown technology. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the dying Stellar Dawn, watching his crew work quietly at their stations. The ship felt colder now, as life support systems struggled to maintain basic conditions. Everyone moved slowly to save oxygen and energy. Lisa Walsh suddenly straightened at her communication station. Her eyes went wide as she stared at her screens. Captain, I'm detecting massive hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts appearing. At the edge of sensor range. Jake moved quickly to look over her shoulder. The readings showed energy patterns unlike anything in human databases. How many ships? At least 6, maybe more. They're huge, Captain. Much larger than our biggest. Vessels. Lisa's voice carried a mix of fear and excitement. They're moving toward us. Brandon Lee worked frantically at his science station, trying to get better readings on the approaching vessels. His instruments struggled to process the alien technology. I've never seen energy signatures like these. Their ships seemed to bend space around them somehow. Red alert, Jake announced to the ship. The warning lights that came on were dimmer than usual due to their power problems. All crew to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Amy Rodriguez helped the injured crew members prepare for whatever was coming. She made sure they were strapped safely to their emergency beds. Pete Collins did what he could to bring weapon systems online, but their ship had very little power left for defensive measures. Claire Thompson watched her navigation screens with amazement. "Captain, they're not following normal physics. These ships are moving through space in ways that should be impossible." Danny Kim tried to prepare for evasive maneuvers, even though their engines were dead. His hands moved over controls that no longer responded. "If they mean us harm, we can't run or fight." The alien ships appeared on their main view screen as they came closer. Jake had never seen anything like them before. The vessels were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They had flowing curves like living things mixed with crystal structures that seemed to catch and bend starlight. Some parts of the ships appeared solid, while other sections looked almost transparent. "They're surrounding us," Claire reported. 6 ships in a perfect formation were completely enclosed. Jake felt his heart pound, but kept his voice steady. This was the moment humans had wondered about for centuries. First contact with alien intelligence. He wished it was happening under better circumstances, but they were alive to see it, and that was something. "All stop," he ordered, though their ship was already drifting powerless. "Prepare for possible contact. Lisa, open all communication." Channels. Lisa's hands moved over her controls. "Channels open, Captain. Broadcasting on all frequencies we know." For several long minutes, nothing happened. The alien ships held their positions around the stellar dawn. Jake could see strange lights moving along their hulls, possibly some kind of communication between the vessels. Were they discussing what to do with the humans they had found? Then, Lisa's equipment came alive with signals. Her face went pale as she looked at the readings. "Captain, incoming transmission. It's in English." Everyone on the bridge turned to stare at her. How could aliens know human language? Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Put it on speakers." A voice filled the bridge. It sounded almost human, but with something different in the tone. The words were clear and perfectly pronounced. "Human vessel Stellar Dawn, we have received your distress call. Do not be afraid. We are here to help you." Jake exchanged glances with his crew. After a moment of stunned silence, he stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Stellar Dawn. Who are you?" "We are called the Architects," the voice replied. "We have been monitoring your species for some time. Your courage in exploring dangerous space has impressed us. We wish to offer assistance." Brandon spoke quietly to Jake. "Captain, how do they know our language? How do they know about humans at all?" Jake wondered the same thing, but decided to focus on the immediate situation. His crew was dying, and these beings offered help. "We appreciate your offer. Our fusion core has failed, and we have limited life support remaining. Can you help us repair our ship?" There was a pause before the architects responded. "Your vessel cannot be repaired with available resources. However, we can transfer your crew to safety. Will you accept our assistance?" Amy moved closer to Jake and whispered, "Captain, we don't know anything about them. This could be dangerous." Jake nodded, but looked around at his dying ship and injured crew. "What choice do we have?" he whispered back. Then he spoke louder to the aliens. "What do you mean by transfer to safety?" "We will bring your crew aboard our vessel, where you will have proper life support, medical facilities, and food. You will be safe while we determine how best to help your species." Pete frowned as he listened. "Help our species? What does that mean?" The alien voice seemed to hear him despite Pete speaking quietly. "There is much you do not understand about your place in the galaxy. We will explain when you are safe and recovered from your ordeal." Jake made his decision. His crew would die in the next few days if they stayed on the stellar dawn. Whatever the aliens wanted, they offered the only chance for survival. We accept your offer. How do we transfer to your ship? Prepare your crew for transport. We will. Bring you aboard our vessel using our technology. Please remain calm during the process. Jake looked at his officers. You heard them. Gather everyone in the main cargo bay. Bring medical supplies and anything else we might need. Lisa stood up from her station. Captain, are we sure about this? What if they're lying? What if they mean us harm? Look around, Jake said, gesturing at the failing systems and dim lights. We're already dying. At least this gives us a chance. The crew moved quickly to follow his orders. Amy gathered her medical equipment and helped the injured crew members prepare for transport. Pete shut down all remaining systems to prevent any possible explosion. Brandon collected scientific data and recordings from their mission. Danny helped organize the crew in the cargo bay. 43 people stood together, looking nervous but hopeful. Some talked quietly among themselves, while others stared at the ceiling, wondering what would happen next. Transport beginning, the alien voice announced throughout the ship. A strange, humming sound filled the air. The cargo bay began to glow with soft blue light that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Jake felt a tingling sensation on his skin like static electricity. The feeling grew stronger until it covered his whole body. The walls of the stellar dawn became transparent around them. Jake could see through the metal as if it was made of glass. Beyond the ship, he saw the alien vessel they were being brought. It was enormous, easily 10 times larger than their ship. The hull looked like it was grown rather than built, with smooth organic curves, covered in patterns that shifted and changed as he watched. A transport effect lifted them gently off the floor of the cargo bay. One by one, the crew of the Stellar Dawn floated through the transparent walls of their ship and across the space between vessels. Jake felt no fear during the process, only wonder at the incredible technology being used to save them. They passed through the hull of the alien ship as easily as they had left their own vessel. The interior was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The walls seemed alive, pulsing gently with warm light. The air smelled fresh and clean, like a forest after rain. As the transport effect faded, Jake and his crew found themselves standing in a large chamber with a high ceiling. The floor felt solid under their feet, but seemed to be made of the same organic material as the walls. Soft light came from panels that looked like they were part of the ship itself rather than separate. Devices. Welcome aboard the Harmony's Edge, the alien voice said. You are safe now. Medical assistance is available for your injured crew members. Food and rest areas have been prepared for all of you. Jake looked around at his crew. Everyone seemed amazed but unharmed by the transport process. The injured crew members appeared to be in better condition already, as if the alien environment was somehow helping them heal. Thank you for saving us, Jake said to the unseen voice. When can we meet you face to face? Soon, came the reply. First, you must rest and recover. Then we will speak of your future and the future of your species. There is much you need to learn about the galaxy you have entered. 3 days had passed since the crew of the Stellar Dawn was rescued by the architects. Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of the Harmony's Edge, still amazed by the living ship around him. The walls pulsed gently with warm light that seemed to respond to his presence, growing brighter as he approached and dimming as he passed. His crew had recovered well from their ordeal. Amy Rodriguez had been amazed by the ship's medical facilities, which seemed to heal injuries using methods she couldn't understand. The 3 crew members hurt in the fusion core explosion were now completely healthy. Pete Collins spent his time studying the alien technology around them, though most of it was beyond human understanding. Jake had been summoned to meet with the architect leader. He walked toward the designated meeting chamber, his mind full of questions about these mysterious beings who had saved them. How long had they been watching humanity? What did they want? Why had they intervened to save one small human ship? The meeting chamber was a large circular room with a high domed ceiling that showed a view of the stars outside. In the center of the room stood a figure that Jake assumed was an architect, though it was unlike anything he had expected. The being appeared to be made of shifting patterns of light and energy, constantly changing form, but maintaining a roughly humanoid shape. "Captain Morrison," the being said in the same voice they had heard during their rescue. "I am Conductor Prime, leader of this vessel and speaker for the Architect Collective. Please sit and be comfortable." Jake sat in a chair that seemed to grow from the floor as he approached it. The seat adjusted itself to fit his body perfectly. "Thank you for saving my crew. We would have died without your help." "Your gratitude is appreciated, but unnecessary," Conductor Prime replied. "We did what any civilized being would do when receiving a distress call. However, there are things you must know about your situation and your species." "I'm listening," Jake said, though he felt nervous about what he might learn. Conductor Prime moved closer, its energy patterns shifting in what might have been emotion. "The sector of space where we found you is not uninhabited as your star charts indicate. It is what we call a testing ground, monitored by an alliance of advanced civilizations." Jake felt confusion wash over him. "Testing ground? What kind of testing?" "Your species has been expanding into dangerous areas of space for decades. You explore systems that other races avoid. You colonize planets with hostile environments. You risk your lives to save others, even at great cost to yourselves. All of this has been observed and recorded." Observed by who? Jake asked, though. He was beginning to understand the implications. By the Galactic Council, a union of civilizations that spans much of this galaxy. When a species reaches a certain level of technology and begins deep space exploration, they enter what we call the evaluation period. Their actions and choices determine whether they are ready to join the greater galactic community. Jake stood up from his chair, pacing as he tried to process this information. "You're saying humanity has been taking some kind of test without knowing it?" "In a manner of speaking, yes. We do not interfere directly in most cases. We simply observe how species behave when faced with challenges. Do they help each other or abandon the weak? Do they explore despite danger or retreat to safety? Do they show curiosity about other forms of life or fear and aggression? And humans? How are we doing on this test?" Conductor Prime's energy patterns shifted in what Jake interpreted as approval. "Your species shows remarkable traits. You venture into areas that terrify other races. You maintain loyalty to your crew members, even when it means certain death. You share resources equally during crisis situations. These are valued characteristics in the galactic community." Jake thought about his crew and how they had faced their desperate situation together. No one had suggested abandoning the injured or rationing supplies unfairly. They had stayed united even when death seemed certain. "But there's something else you need to know," Conductor Prime continued. "The failure of your fusion core was not entirely accidental." Jake felt his blood turn cold. "What do you mean?" "We created the situation that damaged your ship. It was necessary to observe how your crew would react under extreme pressure. This is part of the evaluation process for all species seeking membership in the Galactic Council." Anger flared in Jake's chest. "You nearly killed my entire crew for a test? You put 43 innocent people at risk?" "We understand your anger," Conductor Prime said calmly. "But consider this. How many human ships have been lost to genuine accidents in dangerous space? How many crews have died from equipment failures, hostile environments, or unknown hazards? The testing scenarios we create are far safer than that. natural dangers your species faces regularly. Jake wanted to argue, but realized the being had a point. Human space exploration was incredibly dangerous. Ships were lost regularly to equipment failures, cosmic radiation, asteroid impacts, and dozens of other hazards. At least the architects had been ready to rescue them when their test went as planned. The fusion core failure was carefully controlled. Conductor Prime explained, "We monitored your ship's condition constantly. If your crew had panicked, abandoned each other, or behaved in ways that showed poor character, we would have intervened sooner. But you passed the test admirably. What happens now?" Jake asked, "Do we get to go home?" "That depends on the final evaluation. Your crew's actions will be presented to the Galactic Council, along with data from other human ships that have undergone similar testing. A council will then decide whether humanity is ready for contact and membership." Jake realized the scope of what was happening. Other human ships? How many? Over the past 50 years, we have evaluated dozens of human vessels. In various scenarios. Some faced equipment failures like yours. Others encountered hostile environments, resource shortages, or difficult moral choices. Each test was designed to reveal the true character of your species. And the results? Conductor Prime's patterns shifted in what seemed like satisfaction. Humans consistently show traits that the galaxy values highly. You explore despite danger. You protect your weak and injured. You work together under pressure. You show curiosity rather than fear when encountering the unknown. Most importantly, you extend friendship and cooperation to other species rather than trying to dominate them. Jake thought about the aliens he had met aboard this ship. The Harmony's Edge housed refugees and survivors from multiple species, all living together peacefully. His crew had quickly befriended beings from other worlds, sharing stories and learning about different cultures. What about the species that fail these tests? Jake asked. They continue their development without galactic contact until they are ready. Some eventually mature and earn membership. Others choose isolation. A few become aggressive and must be contained for the safety of peaceful worlds. Contained how? Their expansion is limited to their home systems. Trade and communication are restricted. They are monitored, but not harmed unless they threaten other species. Jake wondered what category humanity would fall into. They had shown both noble and terrible traits throughout their history. War, environmental destruction, and social inequality existed alongside great achievements in science, art, and exploration. "Want to speak with my crew?" Jake said. "They deserve to know what's happening." "Of course. We will be traveling to the Nexus station at the galaxy's center when a council convenes. The journey will take several days. You will have time to prepare your people for what they will face." Jake nodded and turned to leave, then stopped. "Conductor Prime, what do you think will happen? Will humanity be accepted?" The architect's energy patterns brightened. "I have observed many species during evaluation periods. Your people show exceptional potential. However, the final decision rests with the full council, not with individual observers like myself." As Jake walked back through the ship's corridors to find his crew, he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. The actions of 43 people on a dying ship might determine the future of their entire species. They had answered a test they didn't know they were taking, and now they would face the consequences of their choices. But as he thought about his crew and their behavior during the crisis, Jake felt proud of what they represented. They had faced death together with courage and dignity. They had cared for each other without regard for personal cost. They had welcomed alien beings with curiosity and friendship rather than fear and suspicion. If those qualities weren't enough to earn humanity a place among the stars, then perhaps the galaxy wasn't ready for what humans had to offer. Either way, they would face the Council's judgment together. just as they had faced every other challenge in their journey through space. The Nexus station appeared on the view screen of the Harmony's edge, like a small city floating in space. Jake Morrison stood beside Conductor Prime, watching the massive structure grow larger as they approached. The station was built around what appeared to be an artificial star, with thousands of docking bays and habitat modules extending outward in perfect geometric patterns. "This is where the Galactic Council meets," Conductor Prime explained. "Representatives from over 300 species gather here to make decisions that affect the entire galaxy." Jake felt nervous as he watched ships of dozens of different designs moving around the station. Some vessels looked similar to human technology, while others defied understanding. One ship appeared to be made entirely of crystal that caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. Another seemed to change shape as it moved, flowing like liquid metal through space. "How many of these species went through the same testing process as humans?" Jake asked. "All of them. Every member of the council earned their place by proving their worth during evaluation periods. The tests are different for each species, but the principles remain the same. Can they be trusted with advanced technology? Will they contribute to galactic peace and progress? Do they deserve the benefits of membership?" Brandon Lee approached from where he had been studying the stations. "Design. Captain, the scale of this place is incredible. My instruments can barely measure it. There must be millions of beings living and working here." Amy Rodriguez joined them at the view screen. "I've been talking with some of the other species aboard this ship. They all tell similar stories about their evaluation periods. Dangerous situations, difficult choices, tests of character, and cooperation." "What were their tests like?" Jake asked. "The Zentari faced a plague that threatened their homeworld," Amy replied. "The Council watched to see if they would share their medical knowledge with neighboring species or hoard it for themselves. They chose to help others, even when it meant using resources they needed for their own people." Pete Collins walked over from an engineering station where he had been studying alien technology. "The Corvin told me about asteroid miners who had to choose between profitable extraction and protecting a newly discovered ecosystem. They sacrificed profits to preserve the alien life forms they found." Jake nodded as he listened to these stories. It seemed the galaxy valued the same qualities in all species: cooperation, sacrifice for others, protection of the weak and innocent. These were good principles, but Jake wondered if humanity truly lived up to them consistently. "We are cleared for docking," Conductor Prime announced. "You will be taken to quarters where you can rest and prepare for tomorrow's hearing. The Council has reviewed your case and is ready to make their decision." As the Harmony's edge settled into a docking bay, Jake gathered his crew together. They stood in the same cargo bay where they had waited during their rescue, but now the situation felt very different. Instead of facing death, they were about to learn whether their species would be welcomed into the galactic community. "I've told all of you about the testing program and what we represent here," Jake said to his crew. "Tomorrow we'll stand before beings from across the galaxy and answer for humanity's actions. I want you to know that I'm proud of how we handled our emergency. We showed who humans really are at our best." Lisa Walsh raised her hand. "Captain, what if they decide against us? What happens to humanity then?" "I don't know," Jake answered honestly. "But whatever happens, we face it together." Danny Kim spoke up from the back of the group. "Do we get to speak at this hearing? Can we defend our species?" "Conductor Prime says we'll have a chance to present our perspective," Jake replied. "We can tell them what humanity stands for and why we deserve membership in their council." The crew was escorted through the station to guest quarters that had been prepared for them. Jake was amazed by the diversity of beings they passed in the corridors. Some walked on two legs like humans, while others floated, crawled, or moved in ways he couldn't describe. All of them seemed peaceful and purposeful as they went about their business. The guest quarters were comfortable but simple. Jake spent the evening reading reports that Conductor Prime had provided about humanity's evaluation period. He learned that human ships had been tested in dozens of scenarios over 50 years. The results painted a complex picture of his species. Humans had shown remarkable courage in exploring dangerous space. They consistently risked their lives to save others, even strangers from different ships or colonies. They shared resources fairly during crisis situations and worked together effectively under pressure. When they encountered other species, they typically approached with curiosity and offers of friendship rather than fear or aggression. But the reports also showed humanity's darker side. Human history included wars, environmental destruction, and social injustice. Some human colonies had exploited resources without regard for ecological damage. Political conflicts between human nations sometimes interfered with space exploration. Efforts.Jake wondered how the Council would weigh these positive and negative aspects. Would humanity's potential outweigh their flaws? Or would their past mistakes disqualify them from galactic membership? The next morning, Jake and his senior officers were escorted to the council chambers. The room was enormous, with seating arranged in circular tiers around a central speaking area. Hundreds of different beings filled the seats, representing species from across the galaxy. Jake recognized some species from descriptions he had read. The tall, graceful Elari with their silver skin and large eyes. The crystalline Vorthic, who communicated through light patterns. The massive Gornith, who looked like walking boulders, but were known for their gentle wisdom. At the center of the chamber stood a figure that Jake had been warned about. Prosecutor Zethkar of the Hegemony Coalition was known for opposing the admission of new species to the Council. He appeared humanoid, but with rough, scaled skin and yellow eyes that seemed to glow with inner fire. The case against humanity is clear, Zethkar announced to the assembled council. They are aggressive and unpredictable. Their history shows constant warfare, environmental destruction, and social inequality. They expand into space without regard for consequences, claiming systems and resources for themselves alone. Jake felt anger rise in his chest as he listened to the prosecutor list humanity's failures. Every criticism was technically true, but ignored the context and complexity of human civilization. They were being judged by their worst moments rather than their best intentions. Furthermore, Zethkar continued, humans show dangerous tendencies toward rapid expansion and resource exploitation. They consume natural resources at unsustainable rates and show little concern for long-term consequences. Adding such a species to our alliance would destabilize the careful balance we have maintained for millennia. The prosecutor displayed images and data showing human industrial pollution, deforestation, and weapons testing. Jake had to admit the evidence looked damning when presented this way, without context or explanation of humanity's efforts to improve. Finally, humans demonstrate unpredictable behavior under stress. While they sometimes cooperate effectively, they also show tendencies toward panic, violence, and abandonment of moral principles when faced with survival situations. Such beings cannot be trusted with the advanced technologies and sensitive information that council membership provides. Zethkar finished his presentation and returned to his seat. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned toward Jake and his crew. This was their chance to defend their species and argue for humanity's acceptance into the galactic community. Jake stood and walked to the center of the chamber. He looked around at the hundreds of alien faces watching him, feeling the weight of their judgment. Everything he said now would help determine humanity's future among the stars. Honored council members, Jake began. I stand before you not as a perfect representative of humanity, but as an example of what we can become when we face our greatest challenges. The prosecutor speaks of our flaws, and he is not wrong. Humans have made terrible mistakes throughout our history. We have fought wars, damaged our environment, and treated each other poorly at times. Jake paused, making eye contact with as many council members as possible. But those failures do not define who we are. They define who we were. Every species in this chamber has overcome similar challenges to earn their place here. You judge use not by our past mistakes, but by our capacity to learn and grow. Danny Kim stepped forward from where the crew stood watching. If I may speak. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Jake Morrison finished his defense of humanity. He had spoken for nearly an hour, presenting evidence of human compassion, cooperation, and growth. Now the hundreds of alien representatives would deliberate on humanity's fate while Jake and his crew waited in their quarters. Conductor Prime accompanied them back to the guest area. The architect's energy patterns seemed subdued, which Jake had learned indicated concern or uncertainty. The debate will likely continue for several hours, Conductor Prime explained. The Council takes these decisions very seriously. They are determining not just humanity's future, but the future balance of power in the galaxy. What do you think our chances are? Amy Rodriguez asked as they settled into the common area of their quarters. I cannot predict the Council's decision, Conductor Prime replied, but I will say that your presentation was well received. Several Council members seemed impressed by your crew's actions during the fusion core crisis. Pete Collins looked up from a datapad he had been studying. I've been reading about other species that were evaluated. Most of them had to wait years for a decision. Some were rejected multiple times before finally being accepted. And some were never accepted at all, Brandon Lee added quietly. The reports mentioned several species that were deemed too aggressive or unstable for membership. Jake tried not to think about what would happen if humanity was rejected. Would Earth's governments even believe the story when they returned? Would humanity continue its expansion into space, knowing they were being watched and judged? Or would fear of the advanced alien civilizations cause them to retreat back to their home system? Lisa Walsh spoke up from where she sat by the window overlooking the Nexus station. Captain, look outside. There are more ships arriving. Jake joined her at the window and saw dozens of vessels approaching the station. Many of them had human designs that he recognized. Those are Earth ships, he said with surprise. What are they doing here? Conductor Prime moved to look out the window with them. The architect's energy patterns brightened noticeably. It appears the Council has called for additional testimony. These ships contain other human crews who underwent evaluation testing over the past several decades. Claire Thompson counted the approaching vessels. There must be at least 20 ships out there. How many human crews have been tested? More than you might expect, Conductor Prime answered. The evaluation program has been very comprehensive. Every ship that ventured into the Outer Rim territories has been observed and assessed. As Jake watched the human ships dock with the station, he felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. More testimony could help humanity's case, but it could also reveal examples of human behavior that would support the prosecutor's arguments against them. Several hours later, they were summoned back to the Council chambers. Jake was surprised to see that the room now contained hundreds of humans in addition to the alien representatives. Men and women in Earth Space Service uniforms filled an entire section of the seating area. He recognized some faces from news, reports, and space service publications, famous captains and explorers who had pushed the boundaries of human expansion. Not at the center of the chamber, Prosecutor Zeth Carr stood ready to continue his case against humanity. Beside him was a new figure Jake didn't recognize, an elderly human woman wearing the insignia of an admiral. The Council has heard additional testimony, announced the chamber's moderator, a tall being whose species Jake couldn't identify. We will now present the final evidence before making our decision. Zethkar activated a holographic display showing footage from various human ships during crisis situations. "Observe how humans behave when faced with genuine emergencies," he said. This vessel abandoned 3 crew members on a hostile planet to save the majority. This ship's captain ordered the execution of infected crew members during a plague outbreak. This exploration team destroyed a native ecosystem to harvest valuable minerals. Jake felt his heart sink as he watched the images. Each example showed humans making difficult choices that could be interpreted as cruel or selfish. The prosecutor was cherry-picking the worst moments from decades of space exploration. But then the elderly admiral stepped forward. "Honored Council, I am Admiral Helen Carter, former commander of the Earth Deep Space Fleet. I have reviewed all the footage presented by the prosecutor, and I can provide context for each situation shown." Admiral Carter activated her own display. The crew members allegedly abandoned on the hostile planet volunteered to stay behind to repair equipment that would allow the rest of the ship to escape. They were rescued 2 days later when a second ship arrived. The captain who ordered executions during the plague was following the explicit wishes of the infected crew members, who begged not to be allowed to spread the disease to their families. The mining team that destroyed the ecosystem did so only after confirming that the native life forms could be relocated safely to a preserved habitat. The Admiral continued her presentation, showing the full context of each incident that the prosecutor had displayed. What had seemed like cruelty or selfishness was revealed to be difficult decisions made with compassion and careful consideration of consequences. "This is the true nature of humanity," Admiral Carter said to the Council. "We face impossible choices and do our best to minimize harm while protecting the innocent. We make mistakes, but we learn from them and strive to do better." One of the council members, a being whose crystalline body reflected rainbow colors, spoke in a voice like musical chimes. "We have observed other species that abandoned their weak without hesitation, or destroyed ecosystems for profit without concern. Humans consistently choose the more difficult path that preserves life and dignity whenever possible." Another council member, resembling a large insect with iridescent wings, added its perspective. "Our species remembers when humans first encountered our colonies. Rather than claiming our worlds for themselves, they offered trade agreements and cultural exchange. They showed curiosity about our way of life instead of trying to change us to match their preferences." Jake listened as more council members shared their observations of humanity. Species after species described encounters with human ships that had ended in friendship and cooperation rather than conflict or exploitation. Even when humans had advantages in technology or numbers, they consistently chose diplomacy over dominance. The Chamber's moderator called for order. As the testimony phase concluded, the Council will now deliberate. All non-members please return to the observation areas. Jake and the other humans were escorted to a gallery overlooking the main chamber. They watched as the alien representatives began an animated discussion in dozens of different languages and communication methods. Some spoke with voices, others used light patterns. Still others communicated through electromagnetic fields that translated into text on viewing screens. "How long does this usually take?" Jake asked Conductor Prime, who had joined them in the observation gallery. "Decisions of this magnitude can require days of debate," the architect replied. "However, I sense that the Council is closer to consensus than usual. Your species has generated more positive testimony than most." After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the chamber fell silent. The moderator rose from its position at the center of the room. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's application for membership." Jake felt his heart racing as he waited for the announcement. Around him, hundreds of human crew members leaned forward in their seats. This moment would determine whether their species joined the galactic community or continued their journey through space alone. By a vote of 247 in favor to 31 opposed, with 22 abstentions, humanity is granted provisional membership in the Galactic Alliance. The observation gallery erupted in cheers and applause. Jake felt relief wash over him as he realized what this meant for his species. They had passed the test. Humanity would take its place among the stars as part of something greater than themselves. Moderator continued speaking as the celebration died down. Provisional membership includes access to advanced technologies, trade agreements with alliance worlds, and participation in exploration missions. Full membership will be reconsidered in 50 Earth years, based on humanity's integration and continued demonstration of alliance values. Admiral Carter was invited to speak for humanity. On behalf of all humans, we accept this honor and responsibility. We pledge to uphold alliance principles and contribute to the peace and prosperity of the galaxy. As the formal ceremony concluded, Jake found himself surrounded by his crew and other human representatives. Everyone wanted to shake his hand and thank him for his role in humanity's acceptance. "Captain," Amy said with tears in her eyes, "we did it. Our little ship and our emergency somehow helped our entire species earn a place in the galaxy." Pete clapped Jake on the shoulder. "The fusion core failure that nearly killed us ended up saving humanity's future. That's got to be the strangest twist of fate in history." Jake looked around at the celebrating humans and alien council members, who were approaching to offer congratulations. Representatives from dozens of species wanted to introduce themselves and begin planning cooperative projects with humanity.